All right, 8th grade pre-algebra, multiplying integers 2.4, page 73 in the book. So, my page 73 in your book. If you don't have your book, get it open to that page. And again, notice we should be really good. I'm not going to write that again. You should know, right? Well, I will. Positive numbers, the negative numbers, and 0. So those are the integers. We have a key concept box coming up, and I'll put that down here in a second. Product means to multiply. And we had the addition identity. Remember, the addition identity gave the same number you started with, which was 0. But the multiplication identity in this case is 1. Anytime you multiply something times 1, you get that same thing. So the multiplication identity is the number 1, which is in another key concept box later on. So let's first hit the first key concept, which is multiplying integers. There's basically two things that can happen when you multiply integers. Okay, the first thing is you can multiply numbers that have the same signs. That means they're either both positive or they're either both negative. And when you multiply the same signs, all you do is multiply, and the sign stays the same. So, for example, 4 times 2, they're both positive. 4 times 2 is 8, and it stays positive 8. The other example, negative 3 times negative 7, there's 21. They're both negative, so the sign stays. Oh, sorry. That's not right. The sign is not the same. The sign, I'm thinking of it adding. The sign is positive. So when the signs are the same and you multiply them, the answer is positive. So 2 positives make a positive. 2 negatives make a positive. If the signs are different, you multiply, and the sign is negative. So 4 times negative 2 is negative 8. 4 times 2 is 8. 1 negative makes it all negative. Negative 3 times 7 would be negative 21. So signs the same, it's positive. Signs different, it's negative. And those rules right there can be remembered by, I don't know if some of you remember it, there is a story. There is the good guys, the bad guys. There is coming to town, and there is leaving town. So the deal is this. In the Old West, you know, way back when, in the times when there was the good guys and the bad guys, and maybe there still are good guys and bad guys. In a long time ago, when the towns were just building, they wanted good guys in their town. They wanted the bad guys to leave. They wanted the good guys to stay. They also wanted their towns to grow. So they wanted people to come to their town. Now, good guys is a positive thing for our town. Okay? Bad guys is a negative thing. Coming to town is a positive thing. You want people to come to your town, spend money, move there, be happy. Leaving town in general is a negative thing, because if people leave, they take their money, and then there's nobody there, and it just kind of leaves a ghost town. So if we start to combine these things together, we end up with the rules for multiplying. So let's check out the first one. If we have good guys, which is a positive thing, coming to town, which is a positive thing, together that makes a positive. Good guys coming to town is a good thing, so 2 positive make a positive in that situation. So the rule for if the signs are the same, it's positive. So let's check out the 2 negatives. Bad guys, which is a negative thing, leaving town, which by itself is a negative thing. But when we put it together with the bad guys, Two negatives in that case, hey, that's a good thing. We want the bad guys to leave town. They're the ones causing all the trouble. So there's our rules for if the signs are the same to get a positive answer. Now let's look at the opposite. What if the good guys, which is positive, leave town? Which is a negative. Do we want our good guys to leave our town? No, that's bad. We don't want the good guys to leave. We want them to stay. So good guys, which is positive, and bad guys, which is, or excuse me, leaving town, which is negative. When we put those together, a positive and a negative make a negative. And then the other negative situation would be bad guys, which is negative, coming to town, which is a positive situation, but when we put it together with the bad guys, it becomes negative. So this is the same as in that key concept box when the signs, the same signs, because two positives made a positive, two negatives here made a positive. And then the other situation is in the key concept box, which was the difference. So that's just a little story that I remember to help me with those rules. So example number 1, diving. A diver is swimming downward to explore a coral reef. The diver's depth is changing by -2 feet per second. The diver started at sea level. What's the diver's position relative to sea level after 10 seconds and after 30 seconds? So on this case right here, there's some distance here. There's a distance. We can use the distance formula, which you guys know, distance equals rate times time. Okay, so his rate is -2 feet per second. He's going down -2 every second. Where is he going to be after 10 seconds, which is time? Where's his distance? He's going to be at -20. So he's going to be 20 feet below sea level. Okay, where's he going to be after 30 seconds? He's going to be 60 feet below sea level. So notice that I just substituted the numbers into the distance formula, recognized that one was negative and one was positive, and then came up with the answers. So there it's talking about using the distance formula, substituting the numbers in like we did, different signs, so that's like the good guy or the bad guys leaving town, which is, or coming to town, which is a bad thing. And then they do again with the 30 seconds. Substitute it in, different signs, -60 feet. So that's example number 1. Example number 2, multiplying 2 or more integers. So before we do that, there's a key concept box, and you need to write that down. Those are the multiplication properties. So it is okay, this is key concept. Okay, so you have, first off, you have the multiplication property of 0. That means whenever you multiply something times 0, it is 0. So -4 times 0 is 0, even though it's negative, and 0 can't be negative. So remember, anything times 0 is always 0. Then you have the identity property of multiplication. The identity property of multiplication means anytime you times a number by 1, anytime you times by 1, it is that number. Okay, and you should be copying this from the book, not from mine, I'm noticing. 4 times 1 is 4. That's like it's looking in the mirror. The 1 is the mirror, and what does it see? 4. Any number times 1 is that number. 5 times 1 is 5. -2 times 1 is -2. It's like looking in a mirror. So here we are. We're going to do some multiplying right here. We have a 1. I do multiplying in 2 things. I do the number. I just do 1 times 6 is 6. And then I go back and I look at the signs. They're different, so it's negative. I always do it in a two-step process. Just seems to be easier. So let's look at the next. So again, I'm just going to multiply, and it helps to know our facts, right? So I just do 8 times 2, which is 16. And then I look at the two signs. They're the same, so it's positive 16. Done. Anything times 0 is 0. Don't even have to look at the signs. Done. This one, I have 3 things to multiply. So I can multiply from left to right. You can just go in order. One thing I do is I still deal with the numbers. And there's a little trick. Let's talk about the number of negatives here. You have, this one is positive and negative. So if you just multiplied these two, 4 times negative 10, this would come out to be negative 40. Then negative 40 times negative 2 comes out to be positive 12 times 4 is 480. And I still don't worry about the negatives. I just multiply the numbers. You can just go 4 times 10 times 12 and get 480. And then you can go through and just do them in order. You got a positive and a negative, make a negative and a negative, make a positive. So you can go through and count those out to get the right signs. And they did the same thing, multiplied and got the positive 480. So this is a little bit tricky right here. Evaluating, we're going to put in negative 5 for, I'm going to and do something a little different when it's something that just makes it a little bit easier. I'm going to put parentheses where the letters are. And then the parentheses allow me to realize what needs to be raised to the second power, what needs to be times 3, because sometimes we put numbers in and we forget that this 3b means 3 times. So the parentheses is like, I call it a skeleton of the problem. And I put a negative, this was supposed to be A, so I put a negative 5 in right there. This is B, so I put a negative 11 in right here. So I just do the order, and you still have to follow order of operations. So negative 5 squared means negative 5 times negative 5, which is 25. And I keep the plus because I have to multiply. 3 times negative 11 is negative 33. So I went through and did all of my exponents and my multiplying, and I see it's addition now, so I go to my addition rules, which means the signs are different, so I subtract them, and so I get 8, and there's more negatives than positives, so negative 8. Let's see if I'm right. They did the same thing with the parentheses. They evaluated the power, then they multiplied, and then they added. Very good. So the guided practice, here we go. If, in example 1, what's the diver's position relative to sea level after 13 seconds? Well, if you can remember, that was distance equals rate times time. His rate is negative 2 feet per second, so it's going to be negative 2 times 13, which is, he's going to be 26 feet below sea level. And they wrote the distance formula like we did, substitute the numbers in, negative 26. We are so smart. Yes. Okay, find the product. I'm going to just do the numbers. 4. 1 times 4 is 4. A negative and a positive, make a negative. Done. 7 times 0 is 0. Anything times 0 is 0. It's easy. 6 times 11 is 66, and 2 negatives make a positive, so I don't even have to put anything in front of it. That means positive. These, I have got 3 numbers here. 1 times 12 is 12. 12 times 9, I should know that, is 108. When I multiply this one times this one, the 2 negatives make a positive. Then that extra negative makes it be negative again. Okay, evaluate the expression. Here's where I have to do my little, so here's that's for A, that's for C, minus, okay, there's my skeleton. Now put in A is 3, C is negative 8, and I do this because I have negatives too. It's just so much easier. And B is negative 4. Okay, so order of operations, I multiply. 3 times negative 8 is negative 24 minus negative 4. Now I said minus, so you know what that means. Boom, boom. So negative 24 minus, boom, boom. So now I'm adding. Subtract those because these 4 positives cancel out with 4 negatives. That leaves me 20, negative 20. And you see the parentheses help me keep the negatives away from each other. They help me understand multiplying. So I'd like you to practice that the little skeleton things and then fill the numbers in. So I really need to be seeing work on these problems. So they're substituting in. They multiplied just like we did and got negative 20. All right, AC plus B. So again, skeletons. A is 3, C is negative 8, B is negative 4. So again, 3 times negative 8 is negative 24 plus negative 4, negative 28. Works out good. 2 negatives, I'm adding them, they stay negative. I don't know if we can see it. Negative 24 plus negative 4 is negative 28. Okay, so a skeleton here, A squared plus B times C. So let's put it in. A is 3, B is negative 4, and C is negative 8. So 3 squared means 3 times 3, which is 9. And I have to multiply before I add. Negative 4 times negative 8 is 32, and 2 negatives make a positive. And 9 plus 32 is 41. This is fun. You can do this all day. 9 plus 32, and then they get 41. All right, so the last one is AB, so we're still making R. It just helps, especially when you get those exponents, and you'll see as we do problems, we'll get more that are more complicated. B is negative 4, and C is negative 8. So exponent first, negative 8 squared means negative 8 times negative 8, which is positive 64. 3 times negative 4 is negative 12. So negative 12 minus 64, uh-oh, boom, boom. Add the opposite. And now we add them, we get 670, don't want to do that, 76, and it would be negative 76. So there's our setup. So we're good to go with that. So practice making skeletons of those problems, which are, wherever the letters are, and then put the right numbers in. And I think you'll be a little bit more successful, especially with the negative numbers. That way it keeps things separated. Sometimes if you don't, some people would substitute in this AB like this. They would put 3 and negative 4 like that, and then they think it's 3 minus 4. So if you put the parentheses, you can see, oh, yeah, that means to multiply. So I think it just helps, keeps it clear, and makes it a little bit easier. There's the work for this. We can see it underneath my writing. And it comes out to be negative 76. So that's it for 2.4, which was multiplying. Remember the good guys, bad guys story, and we'll see you next time for dividing.